Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you have a chance, we have a bunch of links down in the show notes below. Have a chance, head down there to take a look at them. And everything that's going to be referenced on today's interview is linked down there as best I can. The effort I always go to, making things easy for everyone.
It's valuable effort, honey. Valuable effort.
I have a fan base of one.
It's dedicated
fan base of one, and kind of two tangent fangirls. I feel like I'm like in sync in the 90s. Backstreet Boys. Was it O-Town? That was the Orlando one, right? Wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Oh my gosh. All the ladies are laughing right now that I know any of that. Anyway, because I'm so entertaining, because Ariel is so wonderful, head down and give us a review. You know what to do. Anyway, today we had a great interview with Kayli from Love Learning Everyday YouTube channel.
Yeah, she has a really nice Instagram as well.
She does, and she's a homeschooling mom, 4 and 7 gifted children, military family.
Yeah, I think this is the first military family we've interviewed, and that presents some really unique challenges for Kayli. So I loved getting to talk with her. She's got a wealth of information. She has really checked into a lot of curriculums, and she's really well versed in a lot of options and things. So it was really nice to talk with her. I really appreciated our conversation.
Yeah, we had a nice download at the end. That maybe all of you guys didn't get to hear, but it was really fun. We were talking shop about the various curriculums, Blossom and Root and Build Your Library, Torchlight.
And she's using a few that I hadn't heard of or that I've heard of just tangentially, but I didn't know too much about. And hopefully maybe we'll be able to get her to come back on the show and do some curriculum reviews for us. So, stay tuned for that. But this was a great interview. I love these homeschool journey interviews. I love when we get to talk with somebody whose life is different than ours, right? Being a military family, there's a lot of uncertainty that brings, and moving a lot and having to adapt. And then she has gifted kids as well. And so it's just, I just always appreciate these. I know it almost seems like a silly thing when we contact people and say, hey, will you share your homeschool journey with us? Because they're like, well, it's just my life. Like, you just want to talk about my life. And I think it's fascinating because there's little bits of everything. We're like, oh, you do this? Oh, we were wondering how we were going to juggle our two kids. Or, and I know people listening at home too are listening to these and finding commonalities with their families. You may find solutions to problems that you have now or that you may come across in the future through these great interviews. And we always appreciate parents who are willing to open up and talk about their lives and their families and how they homeschool. We always appreciate that. So if any of you out there listening, really love these interviews and you think nobody wants to talk about my life, we would certainly love to talk with you. Always get in touch with us. We love to share everyone's stories. This is a community aspect of our podcast, and we really love it. So I'm gonna shut up now so that we can talk to Kayli from Love Learning Every Day. Hi, Kayli. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So can you give us a little bit of background about your family? Tell us about your kiddos and why you all chose to homeschool.
Yeah, so we are a secular military homeschooling family, currently stationed out of Maryland. We just moved, so it takes me a while to get used to saying Maryland. But yeah, so I homeschool my 2 suspected gifted kids. I have a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and they both do a couple grade levels ahead in work. So, and that's mainly why we homeschool. We have 2 main reasons, I guess. One is academic, both in the short term academics. I can meet them where they're at right now. I don't have to wait. I don't have to put them in a classroom where they have to do schoolwork associated with their peers. I can meet those needs and even each individual subjects where they're at, but not just in the short term. I think long-term academics is our main goal. Gifted kids tend to like fizzle out or kind of don't meet their potential, which, is kind of silly to put it that way. But I know that's definitely kind of happened to me. And I want my kids to be able to not have the pressure of being advanced or, good at school, and then all the expectations of what that takes, as well as I want them to have the skills that I think I lacked just with actual studying and time management, planning, all that stuff. So I think homeschool can kind of give them a well-rounded academic education through that. And then our second reason is really lifestyle-wise. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the military lifestyle.
We're lightly familiar. We have a couple of friends in the military, and we've known we have some basic knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty perfect for it. But just with the military lifestyle, your spouse is always away, and things can be really hard to predict with the future. So having homeschool be as flexible as it is and give us as much together time is really important as well.
We've kind of wondered if there is a large homeschooling, like kind of a community within the military, world. Is that true? Have you seen a lot of homeschooling, or has there been a rise of homeschooling in the military community?
Yeah, I think it's really prevalent. It's not hard at all for us to find like homeschool groups or anything like that. I looked up the statistics recently, and I couldn't find anything from after COVID, but before COVID, it had the same rates as now currently, like during COVID, homeschool rates are for the general population. So
okay, so it's
Wow.
a little overrepresented then in the military.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, it seems reasonable because you guys may relocate often. You may have to relocate overseas. We've heard that as
Right.
well, and I think we've interacted with a few listeners who I think were maybe over in Germany, and the school. It's hard to get the school systems aligned there, and it might be easier just to homeschool.
Well, and you don't have to deal with language barriers and
exactly.
things. I'm sure it would be very disruptive to have to pull your kids out of school every 2 years, or if station changes even faster than that, and reestablish it. So are you able to find friendships then through the homeschool community that your kids are able to kind of do like remotely because the kids are in different duty stations, or is that still a process of making new friends each time you get to a new location?
So at this point, just with their ages, since they're still relatively young, we mostly do just in person, and they just make new friends.
Okay.
But I imagine there'll be a lot more like Skype calls and stuff like that in the future.
So you said about your kids that you suspect that they're gifted. What is it that first clued you in that you thought that maybe this is going to be that they're going to need to work ahead in grade levels? What were those indicators that you had that they might be gifted students?
Right. So my son, both of my kids, I think, presented differently. But my son at like 2, he was very into puzzles, and he could do 100-piece puzzle. And once he would do a puzzle, then he would want to do it upside down, like not looking at the pictures, just looking at the shapes. And he was always really academically interested too. I know that's not true for like all gifted kids, but he knew all his letters pretty much since he could talk. And I think he just knew that from puzzles and, talking to him and stuff. But there was a lot of things like that. He knew how to read a lot of words before I like tried to teach him. So, and then same with my daughter, like now she's 4, and she was a lot more linguistically advanced, I guess. She, like currently she reads books at night for like an hour after she goes to bed, because she's just, I don't know, she's always been really into reading. So, I guess I've never had them formally tested, so I don't know for sure. But at this point, there doesn't seem to be a benefit to doing that.
Right. It's not like you have to take them into the school system and prove that they're gifted so that they can get placed in special classes and all of that. You can kind of, and maybe is it true that, like maybe your daughter is more linguistically gifted, but maybe she's working not quite as high in math. So, I mean, that's the other thing we can kind of tailor. I think the school system wants them to be like gifted in everything or not gifted at anything, right? Like it's an all or nothing system.
Yeah. I think I found that most true with like handwriting. Both of my kids did not want anything to do with physically writing things down. So we'd be doing like math books or anything like that. And I would be doing the writing. I still do that for my daughter. My son is more into writing now. And I think that's just because, even if they're doing advanced work, they're still, 4. So it's not like every part of them is advanced,
That's right.
So how did you, so you're seeing your kids are excelling, you're getting excited, as every parent would be, is starting to do the educational thing. Have you decided to follow a certain type of homeschooling philosophy? Is there something that your children have gravitated towards?
So I would say we're fairly eclectic. I mean, there's definitely things from Charlotte Mason and classical Waldorf and stuff that we all like, but we're pretty eclectic, I would say. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for us that is not really a philosophy, but it's like our family philosophy, I guess, is just don't wait. If we have the means and the opportunity, or if they have like the interest and the ability, then we do it. So that goes from anything from traveling. Part of being a military family is traveling a lot. So they've been all over and had a lot of great opportunities. And we just try not to think about things too much. It's just, if we have the ability, we're going to do it now. And I mean, that goes to playing board games as well. We play a ton of board games. And we don't wait for them to be the age that's required on the games, They see us play them and then they want to play them. And then for like teaching them to read, everything, it's like, we just don't wait. We just jump full force into everything, I think.
Well, and I think that's a very popular methodology. We've interviewed a lot of parents on the podcast, and they've all kind of fallen into this kind of eclectic, grouping where they do a little bit of everything. And we've had a chance to interview some unschoolers as well, and they kind of follow that intrinsic motivation as kind of the centerpiece. And it sounds like you just go after it whenever it's available.
So does that mean that when you're doing a curriculum, like, you've purchased a year curriculum and your kids are kind of interested in something else, do you pause that and go after what they're interested in now? Or are you like, no, I want to see this through. I bought this thing. I mean, it's really hard. I have a hard time when it's like, no, I purchased this. We want to use the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. I think it depends on the subject and like what we have time for. I'm learning now that we're kind of getting more back out in the world with things opening up and being in a new area and stuff, we have less time. But before, like in the thick of COVID, always at our house, we just always had time to pursue those type of things anyway, that we wouldn't have to like get rid of things. I think it's like now I'm at the point where I'm like, is this really necessary? Is this, adding to our life, or is this taking away from what could happen?
What kinds of curriculum do you utilize in your homeschool?
We definitely use all secular curriculum. I tried religious curriculum before. Just most homeschoolers, I would say most homeschoolers are religious, which is great. And I always thought, I'll just omit the parts that don't work for us. But I think a lot of times it goes a lot deeper into values and stuff. Like I can read a paragraph in a curriculum and I'll be able to tell you right away if it's secular or religious, So now at this point, I don't buy anything not secular. But so I'm definitely a curriculum junkie. I feel like we probably
we are curators of quality educational materials.
So for math, we do Singapore Dimensions math for both of them. And then my son also does Beast Academy online. My daughter will probably start next year, like in the fall sometime. I just want that to be a more independent thing. I could probably help her now, but I'm hoping she'll be able to do it more independently at that age. And then for language arts, she just does Explode the Code right now, just so I feel a little bit better about getting her some like phonics help, because the curriculum we were using before was a little bit tedious for where she was at. It just seemed to take more time than was necessary. So Explode the Code was a nice, quick one. And then my son, because he's a really great reader, he doesn't need any phonics help and stuff. So he's using Michael Clay Thompson for, like grammar and poetry, vocabulary, all that. And then we're also doing Around the World, like you guys.
Cool.
We started out doing we started out doing Torchlight and Build Your Library like you guys, but now I've pretty much just minimized it to like your videos and stuff like that. Cause I don't have the time for all of the stuff. I just want the videos and the books and recipes, and you guys provide that. So that's great.
Well, we're happy to be of service.
Well, when we started it, it was such a big, enterprise when we began, and we were hitting every single country. And I think we're realizing there's kind of a middle ground where we're batching countries now that are more reasonable. Like we're doing Southeast Asia right now, and we're like, there's no reason to do Laos for 1 week and then Cambodia for another week. It's just we batching that whole region together and kind of getting the general feel. And I think that's when we finally finish it, and I think we do a final review on it, I think that's going to be our main feedback.
Yeah, I think I'd rather pick like a couple handfuls of countries that we're really interested in rather than maybe do everything, because it is a lot. But I think it's funny because when we come back around to this in 3 years, when our younger daughter is old enough, we do it again. I think we're just going to look back at our own videos and be like, oh yeah, those were the books. That was the recipe. Oh, that was tasty. We should make that again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely seeing that it's so hard because I don't want to skip anything, but also with moving recently, it's like there was a solid 2 months we didn't do any of that because I wasn't going to the library, to get books, and that's where most of our books came from. So yeah, it's hard. I don't fully know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to condense, and I don't know. We might finish this summer or we might go into like next winter, but we are far behind.
Yeah, it's hard to stay on track. And I think for us, we're constantly feeling this push of like wanting to continue and keep going. And as much as we're enjoying the Around the World, we kind of want to get through that so that we can then start on prehistory. We're really excited to get into prehistory. Oh, yeah. And I'm really excited to do ancient civilizations. And I have a feeling there will be more videos of us being like, all right, we tried to do everything in prehistory. Okay, here was the best stuff, because I always have this vision that we're going to do it all. And of course, I'm going to add more books from the library. Who would not? Yeah. And then I find that I'm like buried in stuff, and I don't know how much our kids get out of that when I have too many resources. There is such a thing. It's over right. Gasp as too many resources.
So I had a question regarding your kids. Like you had this philosophy of, my children have an interest in this, or and I chase after it, and that's very reasonable. Do you go all year round? How do you bring in the next stuff? Like you said your kids are moving through things fast. Do you bring in new materials ready for them to go right into, or is there a flow for your year as you're trying to it sounds like your kids have they're a well and they're very deep and you can fill it up as much as possible. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't go that far. They're not like just begging me to do math homework, but yeah, we definitely just school whenever we can. It's a little bit different now that we're in Maryland. Okay. Just because they have, we have to come up with a portfolio and stuff. So we are going to have a set start and end date. Whereas in Georgia, it was just like, I had to write to the school and be like, hey, we're homeschooling, and then it was just all up to me. I didn't
think about that, having to just totally meet a new state's requirements every time you move. It didn't occur to me.
I think we are going to have at least an end date for them to look at our portfolio, but I still plan on, if we have the opportunity, we'll school, just with how much a vacation that we get, or how many times we don't live by either of our family members. So I'm not going to do school when my mom comes and visits or stuff like that. So we still take quite a bit of breaks, and they're very much unplanned, just because I feel like our life can't really be planned out very well. But so that means we have to kind of do school when we can.
So, with things being kind of chaotic, are you mostly kind of homeschooling and being a single parent while your husband is away, or is it enough back and forth that you're able to kind of share some of your homeschooling duties?
I would say we have to have 2 routines, one when he's gone and one when he's here. And it really depends. I think being in the military is so varied by your job, where you're stationed, by what you're currently doing, who's in charge of you. So it's varied a lot in his career, how we make that work. But it's mostly just different routines. So a lot of times, my husband's about to leave for 5 months at the end of the year. So then I will be a single parent. I mean, I don't like saying single parent because I don't have to worry about money or anything like that. So it's not in the same vein. But when he is here, he's really good at teaching. If he gets home and I have not finished school, he'll like start helping them, or he's a lot better than me at teaching them through life. Like we just went to the Smithsonian National History Museum in DC this weekend. And I think we spent like 3 hours in the dinosaur exhibit, like just the dinosaur exhibit, because he was just like telling them every little thing. And I'm good with the more like relaxed style. And he's just he'll answer all their questions and like dive super deep. Like he's really good at teaching in the moment and everything.
Okay.
So I think we're a good team for the most part.
No, absolutely. Have you found there to be co-ops and things that you can get into? Obviously, COVID is the outlier, but maybe before COVID, if you could remember back, were you able to take your kids to a lot of enrichment activities, or are you planning to, now that everything's opening back up, getting them into maybe a co-op or into, some other type of, enrichment activities?
Right. Yeah. So I feel like we're still balancing what's looked right. I think before COVID, we were a little too busy. We did like jujitsu 3 times a week, and then, soccer and basketball and nature class and all this stuff. And I think it was kind of a nice break, and now I'm realizing my kids, they need a lot more social interaction than like I do. I would be fine just being at home, always. But so I think we're trying to find that balance. So far, we've signed up for Boy Scouts here. I've been talking with a secular co-op, but it's 30 minutes away. So I'm trying to decide if we're going to join that one, which might not seem that bad, but I hate to drive. So, and like sports and things. So we will see. My daughter will do Girl Scouts when she's a little bit older. She's still at an age where there's not a ton for her to do.
No, I understand. Yeah, we're starting to hit that stride where we have the parent partnership. We're doing soccer now. It's starting to swell in time and commitments. How do you manage, the 2 children, on the day to day? Maybe let's get into what your day looks like. What is it when you wake up? Are these kids sleeping into 12? There's some people we've interviewed that they sleep into 11 o'clock. I don't understand these people. But
we're up at toddler 30 every morning.
Yeah, it's 6:30 and she's screaming, "Come and get me!" It's like, So what does your day look like? How do you manage both kids? How do you move between them when you're doing the curriculums? How do you and I'm asking selfishly for my own part. I want to know how you're doing this, because I'm about to have to start doing this. So
yeah, so I don't think we start very early at all. Ideally, I would like to wake up early. I would say most of the time it doesn't happen though. I'll wake up at like 7 and get like an hour to myself normally. So, and that I'll do like, take care of the animals, clean up, maybe set some things out. And then they come downstairs, and normally they start with watching like an educational show. So we're also doing an animal unit with Blossom and Root that we're really liking. So they're watching Wild Kratts in the morning while I make their breakfast. And then once their breakfast is ready and their episode is done, then we start our read aloud. Right now we're reading the Westing Game. That's really fun, by the way. We have like a whole board of trying to like solve the murder and stuff. So that's really fun. And then after that, we might do some of our around the world stuff if I have that ready, either reading from some of our spines or maybe watching some videos or reading some picture books, depending on what's available. And that can take a while. Oh, and recently we've started that they have a journal and they can journal for 10 minutes. Nice. So, and they can write just whatever they want. Most of the time, my daughter just like colors, and my son is currently writing his like ideal video game and like making the characters for it. So it's not very intense or anything. And then we kind of take a break, and they'll normally play a board game, normally separately. They'll each get a board game out, and then I'll switch between them. And by that time, it's probably like 10:30 or so. And then I switch between them. So I'll start doing Michael Clay Thompson with my son, and then he gets a break and he can play with the board game. And then I'll do math with my daughter, and that's Singapore. And then I'll do Singapore with my son. and then I'll do Explode the Code with her. And then we'll take a break, go to the park. What's nice living on a military community is there's, like 10 parks within walking distance. It's really family friendly. So we'll go to a couple parks and then head back. They'll eat lunch, and that's probably about like 1 maybe. And then he'll do his computer school. So that's Beast Academy online and Night Zookeeper, which is like a writing program, like a game. And I'll work with my daughter on like reading, like we'll just read a book together. And then we might work on science or history if I have that prepared. If not, then, we'll end the day there. And that'll be like 2 or 3. And that's when my husband comes home. So
that's really interesting, because I'm trying to understand how people balance the two. I think that's always, interesting to hear that. I know with my daughter, who's my youngest, she can kind of just play and play with Barbies and stuff like that, while my oldest is doing her stuff. And I'd like to get, going around 8, 9 in the morning. I'm, can be done around 11:30 with everything, and we have the rest of the day that's kind of free and enriching, or I can do a little bit more in the afternoon. So it's cool to hear you're able to balance all that. What does your homeschool space look like? Are you everywhere in the house? Are you at the kitchen table? Do you have a homeschool room? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So when we lived in Georgia, so, just a couple months ago, we had, I think, my ideal homeschool setup. Like I painted it and it was our house. And now we're living on post. So it's just like renting and everything's beige and more boring. But so we used to have like a dedicated room. It was the formal dining room. So very much still a part of like the downstairs and the living area. Now it's still it's more of, our house is really strange here, but it's just a really long, great room. So like at one end is our TV, and then at the other end is our like playroom. And there's like a library area, and there's like a dining room area in there too. But so it's very much still part of the living space, but it means we have to be more tidy than we were at the old house.
Is there anything that you have in your homeschool space, or that's something that you use that is, you can't live without? Like, for example, for me, it's crates. I'll always talk about crates. I always have to keep things in crates. I live by the crates, die by the crates, And so is there something in your space that you can't live without?
I talked with my kids about this, and they were both adamant we needed everything. But I think I would probably say like board games, I guess, because like everything else, like mostly we use books. And I mean, like you don't need board games to have fun, right? Like we played board games before we homeschooled and stuff. But like I can't get those, or at least I can't get the good ones from the library, even if you have a good library where you can like rent some board games, it's always like Monopoly or something.
Yeah.
But so, whereas you can you can get pretty much any book from the library, depending on your library system. So I would definitely say I would be very sad without our board game collection.
Okay. Sure. Well,
Word.
that led into a really, great spot here. What are the top board games that you guys are playing right now with your kids?
Yeah.
Maybe the top 2 or 3. Yeah.
We really like, okay, I'm trying to think. We've played Pandemic a lot recently, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but
we just won our first game in a
long
while, because it's very hard to win sometimes, especially with 2. It is like,
it's very difficult.
We thought it was time. It felt too soon earlier, but we thought it was time the other day, and we won, and we were like, oh, we won.
Yeah. We like kind of cheated one last time we played. Like what we were doing didn't work. We're like, okay, let's go back 3 turns and like figure it out. But yeah, we got that just to kind of do like get them more familiar with places around the world, and it's cooperative. So I feel like you can introduce kids. I would say my 4-year-old struggles a little bit with it for the duration of the whole game, but I definitely like it. And then we really like this puzzle game called Ubongo. At least that's how I pronounce it. I'm not sure if I'm saying it wrong. Have you guys played that?
No.
So it's basically like you have all these little Tetris pieces, and you roll the die. It tells you which pieces you have to use to like solve this shape puzzle.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's 2 levels. So you can either play with putting in 3 pieces or putting in 4 pieces. And there's a timer. And as long as you complete your puzzle in the timer, you get a gem. But if you're first, you get like an additional gem. And if you're second, you get an additional gem. So it's good because even if you lose every time, you can still win the game just by luck, because each gem is worth different points, and you're like reaching in for a mystery gem, and everybody can play it at different levels. And it's just like a fun, quick logic game that we really like. So I highly recommend that one.
Well, Ariel's putting it on the wish list right now. I think we're going to give that one a try. We always love the puzzle games, and I'm beginning to get excited around kind of Tetris derivative type of games, like what you're describing. We had the same thing with silver and gold.
Oh yeah, I heard you guys talk about that. It's still on my list. I haven't.
Ooh, you got to get. And you can often find it for like $6 or $8 when it comes on sale.
I play with the 6-year-old all the time. She really likes
good.
playing with it. Maybe your 7-year-old might love.
If you like
love
Tetris
it.
shapes,
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Let me think of another one. We also really like Sushi Roll. Have you played Sushi Roll?
We haven't. We have Sushi Go Party, but we've not played Sushi Roll.
So it's very similar, except for instead of cards, you have dice to roll.
Oh, nice.
So you're passing and you might get like 3 makis or 2 makis or 1 maki. So it's like chance in figuring out, well, I do need, the blue dice, or, I do need to get sashimi, but this is a bad sashimi to get. And you're like always passing and you're hoping that other people roll poorly so that you get to collect the good ones. And yeah, I think it's a little bit more fun and like adds an extra element to Sushi Go.
No, we've long loved all the sushi derivatives. We'll have to maybe give that one a try.
Yeah. We don't eat sushi, but we play sushi.
Yeah, it definitely takes up more room on the shelf, but I think it's worth it.
So pivoting away from the games, talking a little bit about maybe some preconceived notions. Were you always thinking of homeschooling when you had your son when he was young? Were you always planning on homeschooling, or was that just an idea on the cards? What was your thinking around there? And did you have any preconceived notions around homeschooling that might have changed?
Yeah, so I was not always thinking of homeschooling. When he was young, because I had him fairly young, and I was going back to school to become a teacher. So I did end up finishing that degree, but by the time I finished it, I realized that like he probably wouldn't excel as much as he could at home. I think by learning what they do in a classroom, and we read a book about teaching gifted kids in today's classroom and everything. And it's just like, it really solidified. And then I just had to tell my husband about it, but I think it already fit really well with our lifestyle. Like I was already staying at home. So it wasn't a big transition. It was just, we just added something to do instead of playing a game. Maybe we have a little bit more structured time and stuff. And I started homeschooling them kind of as like an experiment before, because they didn't have to be homeschooled or like in public school till 5, but I started more at like 3 when they were interested, and then realized like, oh, this is really working. And then, it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, we did the same. We started with the Torchlight and Blossom and Root and early when they were kind of like quote unquote in preschool. And our plan was to homeschool, but we, it was always nice to test the waters to see if it worked. Did you talk a little bit about you becoming a homeschooling person? Was that a big change in your psyche? And, did you have to make any changes in your own thinking and the way you handled things I find patience is a big thing that I've had to learn, and kind of just be relaxing a little bit more. I tend to be a little bit more high strung on these type of things because I want it to go faster than it is. And,
Yeah.
Were there some challenges for you to overcome when you started homeschooling?
Yeah, I think so. A little bit different than you. Maybe the other side of the coin to that. I was always really into like gentle parenting and like attachment parenting. Like I nursed them for a long time. They co-slept for a long time. I was always there, like just always, and it just seemed like really natural, and we were really flexible with it, probably too flexible. I think it's been harder for me to transition to being more consistent, because I've really learned that, especially with skill subjects, like you really have to be consistent with it. It's just, at least for my family, I guess I don't want to speak for everybody, but definitely things like math and learning to read, or even things like music or foreign language, all the things that take like skill, like even if it's just like 5 minutes a day, practicing makes perfect. And I think I always struggled with that. I was way more relaxed, probably too relaxed, just like, oh, he's, doing this creative fun thing. He can do this all day. And like, yeah, I think that works most of the time. And probably all the unschoolers are getting mad at me right now. But I think for me, it's like, I realized that, we need a little bit more than what I was naturally giving, I guess, for both me and my husband's to be like comfortable and stuff, I guess.
Is that a little bit of even more so now that you're in Maryland, that requires a little bit more structure in your reporting and whatnot? Has that fed into your homeschool in some way, where maybe you have to keep a planner, or you have to keep, a binder full of information or reports or whatever? Is that something that is further impacting or changing how you homeschool?
Yeah, I think I like squeezed by this year for the most part. Our unit, not our unit, but our like county is doing it a little bit differently. But I imagine next year it'll go back to like portfolio. And then I'm really going to have to think about them writing things down more, because I don't know if they'll want a worksheet that is done by, me or, looks like it's done by me because I'm the one writing it type of thing. So I'm probably going to have to get them to just do a couple worksheets for the semester or something to prove that they're working towards it, but as well as there's more subjects like that are required. I haven't had to worry about health before. And now I'm going to have to kind of think about I think it can be more relaxed, but I feel better if I have, all of my ducks in a row and I won't be caught off guard or anything.
Are there any unique testing requirements in Maryland that you know of?
No, so you don't have to test. I asked my son, they allow you to test with the public school. And I asked him if he wanted to do it. I was like, you don't have to do it. And he wants to. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
But he is weird. We just did a math competition test too with Math Kangaroo. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
So it's like it's like math competition that goes all the way from like kindergarten to, I think it goes all the way up to 12th, but I could be wrong. It might just be elementary, but it's just like a 70-minute test, and we haven't gotten the results yet. We just took it like 2 weeks ago, and they said it takes like 2 months to get the results. So I don't know if they're going to rank people or just tell them what they could do better at this age or what. He was really excited about that. I did a lot of math competitions, not that young, but like in middle school and stuff. And he seems to like it as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'll have to look at that. I kind of liked I was a math team person, I'm gonna admit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be that's interesting. I'd love to check that out. So you were talking about the things that you've changed, the way that you've had to kind of be more structured in things, and kind of getting back to what Matt was going after, to when you started homeschooling, what did you think about homeschoolers, and and how has that changed? Not only the way you teach changed, but your thoughts around this community now that you're a part of it and didn't expect to be.
But yeah, I didn't have much. I didn't have much experience with homeschoolers in high school. I went to like a kind of like an elite math and science center type of situation, and one person there was previously homeschooled and then went there, and I thought he was very awkward at first. So, but he was really my only experience. And, but that being said, by like 2 weeks in, he was the most popular guy there. So I don't think, probably if in that age, if I would have went to a homeschool group, I would have been the awkward one, So, but yeah, so I think before I was a little bit nervous about social stuff, and now it just doesn't seem to matter to me. I would much rather have my kids be able to make friends really easily. I think there's a big, I don't know, like when we go to a regular park where like after school is out, or if we go to a homeschool meetup at a park, it's just way easier to make friends. And maybe that's because I have the weird kids now, but it's just so much more like relaxing that it doesn't bother, like, even if they are weird, I think that's fine. I mean, they're around other people all the time and they have that. So I think my perspective has just changed on like what actually matters in life, So I don't know.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, it's definitely a concern, getting out, especially after COVID. I think it's been the big thing. The mask came down finally here in Washington, and it seems like there's been a blossoming in the classroom. A lot of teachers are really excited. Kids are a lot more excited, and I think there's just more interaction. I think it's been a good thing.
Even at the park and things, we've noticed it.
We have. I
think it's really natural to be, concerned about the social aspects, even though we plan to homeschool when we were still dating. So this is how long this has been in the works. And even we were like
a long time ago, lady.
Yeah, it was. Even we were like, we need to be prepared for this because, we don't want to raise socially awkward kids. And how do we, because that is such a common stigma for homeschoolers that they're going to be weird in some way. And not that weird is bad, right? Nerds rule the world right now. But we also don't want to, and we never wanted to hinder our children.
Sure.
And because we've made this decision, it has a negative impact on their life. We want it to only be a positive impact. And I think it is a struggle. It is a hard thing. And I even watch when our kids interact with our older daughter, especially when she interacts with other people, strangers and stuff at the store and things. I'm always like watching, today we went and dropped our car off and the guy at the service center asked my daughter, he goes, "Oh, were you not feeling well today? Because you're off school." And she goes, "Oh, no, I'm homeschooled." And he goes, "Oh." And I was kind of just waiting. Was he going to make some comment about, "Oh, she's not awkward," or, I was kind of waiting for this to happen. And he was like, "Great decision." Yeah. We're like, "Oh, okay." But I'm always watching and trying to gauge. And I'm wondering if the more people homeschool and the more mainstream it is now, especially after COVID, everybody seems to know a homeschooler that didn't before, right? Are we going to even let go of some of this stigma? I feel like I still hold that stigma in my heart, and I'm a homeschooler that it still worries me, even though I purport to say it, of course our kids are fine. They're going to be social. And, we have plans for this. I still kind of, I don't know. It's hard to think to let those preconceptions go, and not worry about it. So I like that you're not worrying, because I still do kind of like, it lingers in the back of my mind, because it's stuck around for so long. That's the image. It's a super religious, awkward homeschoolers that, can't function in society as adults. Like, that's not what we want to raise.
Yeah. Right. I recently went to a different homeschool group, and it was on base. So I would say most military people are fairly conservative and religious. So that was definitely, I think all the kids got along fine, but there was a lot of awkwardness, I think, from me and talking with the parents and stuff. So I think it's, no matter what, it's hard as like a secular homeschooler too, to kind of find, probably less hard where you're at for sure.
We do have a lot of secular homeschoolers out here in Western Washington. We've even marveled at that when we first moved out here. We were surprised at how many homeschooling co-ops that were non-religious affiliated were here. And then there's always been a kind of a history of kind of, secular homeschooling out in the West Coast. And that's been something that's been around for a while. But yeah, it could be a challenge, especially if your kids are interacting with other kids that may have different curriculums and stuff. It might be more of an issue going forward, when they're like maybe talking about what they're learning about and stuff like that. But you talked about how your son is, a couple levels ahead. This is something that Ariel and I have talked about a few times too, is that, our oldest now is starting, because we go all year round, and, we just, you just chip away at these curriculums. You end up moving faster than you would anticipate, in a regular public school or even a private school. And we're starting to get to that point where our oldest, can't go to public school because she'll have to go ahead in a year, right? Her math and reading will be ahead. Is that I know you've talked about maybe going the distance, but there's always that lingering concern about them getting, really far ahead. Are you planning to go, all the way with homeschooling, or is there always that lingering chance that you might go back into some educational environment?
Yeah, I think we're definitely leaving possibilities open.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say it's hard for me to even picture it. I would say above academics even is lifestyle. So being like having to follow a strict like public school like routine and schedule would be extremely hard, especially like if my husband is coming back from deployment. I want to be there and be there as long as possible and hang out with them whenever we can, So academics, I could see an environment where maybe I would find a really unique school that would kind of do all the things that I want, that's really independent and fosters them to learn at their own level and like explore projects and stuff. But things that I've seen like that are cost prohibitive. So I'm not, I kind of don't think it'll happen. But right now they also don't have interest in that. If they start like asking about public school or anything, then I'm sure we'll have to talk about it. But in my head, I don't see us even really considering it until middle school or high school. And even that, I wouldn't think that we would do that at this point. But, who knows what's in the future.
Well, yeah, our biggest deterrent for our 6, almost 7-year-old is going to be, I just point out at the bus that goes by at 7:30 outside every morning. I'm like, that's what you'll have to catch, kid. And she's like, that's it. I'm back to homeschooling. I'm good. No.
It's funny though, talking about being forward a couple of levels, because we've talked about that. When our kids are young and they're in early elementary, there's a lot of runway for that, right? I have a second grader who's doing 5th grade math. Okay. At some point though, that runway is going to run out.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you've kind of thought ahead a little bit. We're starting to have the same thought experiment about, where are we going to go? Because at some point, there's not good texts available when you get past basic high school math, right? Like it's all college level text. Have you given any thought to kind of what you'll do if they continue to move so far ahead?
Yeah. So yeah, math is definitely the tricky one. When we lived in Georgia, they allowed you to do, to kind of enroll in a college for free, like as just like public school is able to do that there. Here, I don't think that's an option. So that was always my thought before, I guess. There are like different avenues to take in math, like you can always do a full year on statistics or go into trig more. Do Calc 1 and Calc 2. You know what I mean? So there's definitely things. I would imagine though, at a certain point, it'll be college classes, whether that's online or in person or, depending on what they want to do. At a certain point, I don't use my Calc studying in the day-to-day, but
I haven't had to use my differential equations in a long
time.
Right.
No. We've taken a lot of math and engineering, and I don't use most of it.
No.
And I guess I wonder if we're able to take AP. I wonder if we're able to sign our kids up for AP exams.
I would imagine you can.
Because, if that's the case, then, you can always teach it and get college credit for it, which would be something. But I am always worried about that kind of that runway at some point. But like, I like what you're saying too. You could go into statistics, you could go into economics, you could do some other things once they've covered all of the high school bases. Cause I'm just thinking, if we continue at this velocity,
our current velocity
will run
move
out.
us ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Cause I know, cause like I said, I did this like math and science center program, but it was a bunch of schools in the county that all fed into it. And there was only a couple of schools that let you take like geometry, I think, in 8th grade. So they were a little bit advanced. And then eventually they ended up taking a full year of statistics so that we could all take calculus together, if that makes sense. So it was all, they had like other things to kind of push people into if they got ahead in certain things and stuff.
So speaking of ahead and thinking of, the future, what challenges are you kind of foreseeing coming up in the next few years? Is there something that you're kind of have in the back of your mind that you're concerned about, that you're preparing for? I mean, we've certainly have our own that we're thinking of, how are we going to juggle two kids? What are we going to do when she taps out of math? Those kind of questions. Are there other concerns that you kind of have in the future that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think one concern, I guess, that I just always have is I don't know where we're going to live in the future. So knowing kind of how, like, for example, here, we could be here for less than a year, or we could be here potentially for 10 years, and we'll find out that soon. And some of it is really weird because of my husband's unique situation. Most things aren't that crazy, but so I think a lot of it has to do with that, just like questioning, like, how are we going to do this and stuff. But I would say right now, like, my current struggle and like thought, and probably what will be on my mind for a while, is how to, as far as like assigned reading goes, I don't want to make my kids read a bunch of books that they don't like. Right now, my current philosophy is if I want them to read a book, I'm going to read it out loud, and they have full opportunities to pick whatever they want while we silent read. And right now it's working. However, there's so many great books in the world, and a lot of families do have, type of reading lists and everything, but I also don't want to hinder my kids' love of reading. So that's kind of my current struggle as far as that goes, as well as helping as my daughter gets more advanced. Right now, she only does a couple of things. So adding her more into our day is going to be a little bit difficult, and balancing them, because I tend to like really teacher intensive curriculums. I say always like academically rigorous, but implemented in a gentle way, where it's just like stories, or where playing games or something like that, but it's really advanced. I think something like Michael Clay Thompson is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so all those things take time. So figuring out exactly what's the best use of my time. Is it doing this curriculum? Is it signing up for co-ops? Is it doing, I think it's a struggle I'll always have, is trying to balance what is worth the time and what is not,
Yeah. Picking the right resources and knowing that your kids are going to like them, and that you're going to get the, desired result out of whatever resource you choose. I kind of feel like I'm thinking like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do next year. Ooh, shiny. I think this looks really good. Is my kid really going to like this? Is this going to give the base level understanding that I want them to get? And how much time do I sign Matt up for? Because I buy the curriculum and he teaches it. So sometimes, he's like, what? Yeah. How much work is this one?
I'm the full-time teacher on contract. You just do whatever you guys do.
That's right. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I think that's those are worries that I share is too. It's like we want to give our kids the world, and we have the power. We can study whatever we want. We can purchase whatever books we want. And it's analysis paralysis almost to me sometimes.
With moving, especially now that we're in like really close to DC and Baltimore, and even fairly close to like Philadelphia and New York City and stuff, it's like, well, maybe we need to shift what we're learning right now. Like, this is a perfect opportunity to do more like American history as opposed to around the world. But it's like, if I just put that on the back burner, like, when am I getting back to that? So it's like, right. It's hard to figure it out.
Yeah, it can be really challenging.
We're always looking for that kind of wisdom and everything, and looking forward into the future. You have a lot of experience. Do you have any wisdom you can pass on to maybe some young families who are just starting right now?
Yeah, I would say a thing that took me a while to like really understand how important it was because everybody talks about teaching to how your kid learns, and I think that can get overwhelming sometimes. I think the best curriculum is a done one. So I think it's equally important to teach to how you like to teach, how you're going to, obviously within reason. If your kids are just like eyes glassing over and not being able to pay attention. But if it takes all you got to use all the little math manipulatives, then maybe, get one that's like easy and fun for you. You know what I mean? And I think that took a while for me to realize, like, I'm a person that also has needs. And
you're part of this equation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We do talk all about learning styles so much.
Yeah.
And, is your kid an auditory learner, or visual learner, kinesthetic? And so that can put a lot of pressure on you to find the curriculum that's perfect for them, but it may not really be perfect for you. And if you can't teach it, or don't feel comfortable, or feel stressed about teaching it, then that's probably not a good choice either. There's probably some sort of middle ground.
So before we close out and say goodbye, could you tell us a little bit about the Love Learning Everyday YouTube channel?
Yeah. So I started the YouTube channel when I started homeschooling. So there's a ton of content on there for sure. But I basically share everything curriculum wise, a lot of like book hauls and board game stuff, as well as like homeschool updates with how homeschool is really going, because I think a lot of times you can just see like a lot of great inspiration all the time, and it can be overwhelming to not see any of the bad stuff. But yeah, I just try to share anything and everything, like resource wise and homeschooling wise there.
Yeah, it's funny when you reached out to me, because I was like, I've watched you. I've seen this before. You've got some great videos. So we really encourage our listeners to check it out. Look down in the show notes and you'll see a link to Kayli's YouTube because it's really fantastic. I was reading it before I even knew who you were. So
nice. Thank you. That's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. This was great. It was a great discussion, and we loved having you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice being here.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!